Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. Okay, guys, I am super excited to kick January off with an amazing guest coming to the podcast today. Today we have the wonderful Roeder, who I am very excited to welcome to the podcast and talk all things social media scheduling and, of course, some epic sales strategies as well. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm very excited, and we have just realised that we're basically neighbours. So I made a complete faux pas and was like, hey, Laura, whereabouts in America are you? And she was like, I'm actually in the UK. So it's good to know that we're both on the south coast of England at the current time. Freezing because it's hideous as we are recording. But I'm really excited about this interview because MeetEdgar is something that I've known about and used, and it's one of the only tools in my business that I've used pretty much for the entirety of the 4 years that I've been in business so far, because inherently I am a lazy person. And so for me, MeetEdgar was this amazing thing that when I was in my corporate job setting up my business, I really wanted something that meant I could walk away from my business in the day when I was actually working and schedule posts and, be putting content out there. And there really wasn't, when I started out, there really wasn't anything that you could use to that effect. And then, of course, I stumbled across MeetEdgar and I was like, oh my God, this is life-changing. Here's me. I can create all this content. And not only can I schedule it to go places, but actually I can repurpose it too. And it genuinely changed the course of my business and certainly what we've done in social media. So for me, I'm like, oh God, it's revolutionary. But tell us what you do on the day-to-day, because it's a very different company to run.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I actually had no idea that you had been a customer for 4 years until just now. So I'm super happy to hear that. So thanks for that. Yeah. So the day-to-day, I actually recently moved to a founder role and promoted someone else as president, which is, a really big change for me in the business and really exciting. And so a lot of what I do now is representing the business on opportunities like this, on podcasts. I'm also still steering the big vision and the big strategy for the business. But yeah, at the end of the day, we're a software company. So a lot of it is right now, when this goes live, we'll have just released Instagram. So we're actually going through a bunch of compliance stuff with the App Store right now, just really boring. Yeah, really boring things. But I have faith it will work out, which is why I said by the time you listen, it'll definitely be live. So yeah, we're a small team. We're about 15 people, a mix of developers and customer service and the people who run the administration and operations side of the business and the marketing team. And I'm kind of the person who is kind of watching from a distance, watching the magic happen.
I kind of feel like it's one of those puppet moments where you're like, dance, puppets dance. That's what I always say to my team. I'm like, that's how I feel some days, just like God. Except not as powerful, I'm guessing.
Right.
What made you kind of come up with a software idea specifically for social media scheduling? Because when this came out, it was incredibly new. Like as a concept, people, had been able to obviously go into their Google calendars and figure out about scheduling posts themselves. Right. But there wasn't really anyone doing this. Yeah,
so I have been working in the social media marketing space for a long time, for about 10 years, actually. I started in 2008 doing social media marketing consulting, and then I had social media training courses. And when we launched Edgar, which was in the summer of 2014, there were just so many things that were lacking in the tools out there. I mean, that are still lacking in most of the tools. People have launched a few copycats of our tool now, so it's not as unique as it once was. That happens when you create something good, it's okay. But, still most of the tools out there, when they send your social media update, it's like you type it in, they send it, but they don't really do anything else. So I, in training people about social media, had come upon the strategy of, it sounds simple, but just repurposing content. We all work so hard to record podcasts and write blog posts, and then we send them out once, on social media. We send them out a few times on social media. And most small businesses are not writing journalism that's not interesting tomorrow, right? Most of us are writing thought leader type of content, how to, advice, stuff like that. That's good for years and years to come. Yet we tend to get ourselves on this hamster wheel of we have to create all this content over and over again instead of just repurposing what we already have. So I was doing all this manually, like, with the spreadsheet and the Google Calendar, trying to keep track of sending, my stuff out over and over again. And it's like, why isn't there a social media tool that just does this for me? And so that's exactly why I built Edgar. That's exactly what Edgar does. You just put in your content or anyone else's content, and then Edgar really handles repurposing it, sending it out on social media.
Which I really love, because as a salesperson, one of the big stats that comes up around sales is, a customer has to have 7 touch points. And so what we tend to see with new businesses is, like, say, they'll put out a piece of content once and they'll go, but why didn't it get me 1,500 opt-ins? Right. And everyone's like, I don't know, what a rip-off. And instead, it's about thinking about, well, how much visibility is my content actually getting? And is it doing the job? And that's the great thing about Edgar, is that you can put that to auto.
Yeah, and the thing is, you see all of your own stuff. I think that's one of the hardest parts to remember, because people will always feel like, oh, I'm promoting too much, I'm bothering people, I've already sent this out a bunch of times. No one is watching your social media feed the way that you are, right? They only see a tiny percentage of it. And by the way, if they do see something repeated, no one cares. That's a very normal thing. Like, that's actually, if you think about it, we all want our stuff to go viral. What does go viral mean? It means you saw it in 100 places, right? It means you saw the same thing over and over again. It's a normal part of using the internet, coming across the same thing. And you often need to see a link 4 times before you finally click on it. Then you click on it, but you don't actually read it. You see it again. You're like, oh, I clicked on that the other day, but I never made it to that tab, right? There's obviously we're so overwhelmed with content, with stuff on the internet. So what feels to you like, oh, I'm bothering people, I'm promoting so much, I've already sent this out, is just like not even registering for your audience.
And it's so funny, isn't it? Because, you're completely right. I think a lot of people do get into their own head when it comes to, oh my goodness, I'm promoting all the time. But actually, that's kind of what you should be doing when you have a business, because if you are proud of something and if you really do want it to be able to help people, you've got to be the one who drives that initial conversation, and I'm sure that you found this. You set up a completely new company that was doing something that was incredibly different to what the market was doing. A lot of people out there would have been like, well, I'm fine just using an Excel spreadsheet and, it's all good. Why should we do it like that? How did you find it when you had to start promoting? Did you find that it was uncomfortable, or did you find that you were like, I've created this awesome thing and everybody should be using it?
I mean, I've always felt very confident, because I just know how much time we save people. I mean, talking to someone like you who's a customer is very obvious to our customers, how much time we save people. But the challenge for us has always been, and I think still is, that we kind of offer a new paradigm on your social media strategy, because what is unique about our tool is we offer a perspective, we offer a workflow. We're not like this tool has 1,000 different features and you can do any sort of social media workflow and you can use it for customer service and you can use it for this or that, right? We're like, we have found a great effective way to make social media marketing just happen for you in an authentic way that you'll really love. Like, let us do it for you, but it might not be how the person was doing social media, or maybe they just kind of didn't know what to do on social media before they came to us. So I think that has been our challenge in selling and explaining Edgar, kind of finding that balance between, not confusing people by explaining every detail, but then also wanting to make people understand how it is different, because a lot of people just look at it and be like, oh, it's just, I sort of joke like, oh, you can just pay more for buffer, like if you want us, but we actually are like very, very, very different. We do something very different than buffer. But if you're just sort of glancing around, you're like, oh, it's a social media tool. Why would I pay more than, like, we don't have a $10 a month plan. We're not a $10 a month type of tool. And so it's like, making people understand that without boring them to death of every detail of how we do it.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think one of the things that I'm always saying to people is that people only want to know how you can solve their problem. They don't really give a stuff about the features. And that's the thing that always strikes me when I look at the emails that you guys send out or the sales pages that you have, is that I look at the benefits and I go, okay, well, how is this, is it going to save me time? Yes. Is it going to mean that my team don't have to work as hard? Yes. Is it going to mean that, our content impacts more people? Yes. And that's why we like it, because you are a specialist, and I'm right. For my audience, that if I have a broken heart, I'm going to go to a heart surgeon. I'm not going to go to someone who can do LASIK and also be like, oh yeah, by the way, I can sort out your veins and your arteries as well. That's not going to happen. But I think that sometimes people are scared to say that they are the specialist, because like you say, when you're not cheap, it becomes a little bit uncomfortable to have that conversation sometimes.
And also, you know, it's interesting because you also will hear some pushback from customers. So I think there's sort of a difference between what people look for pre-purchase and then once they've purchased what they ask for. So yeah, I 100% agree. Like pre-purchase, you're like, this is my specific problem. I want to find the best, you know, tool, service person to do this. But then after they're there and they like you, so with us, with our customers, people are like, well, maybe we do want like a listening tool for our brand. And, you know, maybe we do want like to be able to answer customer support tickets, and because that always sounds good, right? It's a compliment to your business. It tells me, okay, they already like us. They already trust us. You know, they want us to provide more services for them. And if you ask people like, what would be cool if we did this or that, you'll often get a lot of answers that are all over the shop because people are just telling you all the problems they have with their business. So I think that also gets tempting as an entrepreneur, and you start to get nervous. You're like, oh, well, like I'm supposed to be pleasing my customers, right? I'm supposed to be listening to my customers and they're talking about this or that. So you really have to find that balance between, of course, listening to your customers and listening to their problems and seeing how they're using your tool, but also saying no and staying focused, saying this is our core ability. This is what we do really well.
And I think that's really interesting. So something that's come up, I was speaking at the Youpreneur Summit a few weeks ago. And one of the things that came up there when I was talking to people was this idea of feedback loops and who do you really take feedback from? You know, because yes, we should be listening to our customers, but also our customers aren't always right. And that's the thing, annoyingly so, you know, we want to make sure everybody has a great experience, but also sometimes when you're running a business, you have to ultimately be responsible for those decisions. And that does sometimes mean you have to say to people, well, do you know what, that's just not the direction that we're going to go in, but go and do this or go and try that, and we can recommend X, Y, Z instead. And I think that's the really interesting thing about when I'm looking at the most successful companies, and when, you know, I'm talking to different people who have created multi-million-dollar businesses, they've done one thing and they've done it really well. And then once they've mastered that, maybe they've set up a different company, or maybe they've gone on to do something else, but they've done one thing, they've really focused, they've really committed and seen it through. I'm
such a huge believer in that. And we really focus on that simplicity at our company. So something that we do that's very unusual, we only have one plan. So most tools have a lot of different plans, but we're like, you know what, if we're focused on who we know our customer is the entrepreneur who's either doing social media themselves, or maybe they have a VA who's helping out. Most of our customers are female. We have a lot of service businesses. Why do we need an agency plan, right? Let's build the best possible version of the software just for our customer, and let's charge them the appropriate amount instead of giving them all these choices and making them pay more for features or choose which features they want or don't want. So it streamlines a lot of decisions for us, because we're like, when we build a new feature, we don't have to decide, oh, does it go on these different 4 plans? Do we charge more? Who gets it? Where are we capping people? It's like, let's just build the best thing we can for this one person and just charge them a flat rate, and that's not have to worry about it anymore.
That makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I love this. And the other thing that I'm, you know, and I know that my audience will kick me if I don't ask, but we have to talk about recurring revenue. Because let's face it, MeetEdgar is a recurring revenue driven business model. And I think that, I mean, I know when I was reading about this, you guys have over 5,200 customers. Like that is a lot of people to keep happy, but especially in this current world where actually attrition rates are high. Like the average person for something like a membership, for example, they're losing a third of their custom every 3 to 6 months. And you guys are building this super, super solid fan base who really are like, no, I'm completely bought into Edgar, I'm completely bought into your mission, completely bought into you, and I will continue to pay that recurring fee every single month because I believe in what I'm getting. Do you think that that is because you are so focused and you have the simplicity of the one plan and you just really focus on giving your customers what they want?
Yeah, you know, I love recurring revenue. It's great.
Tell me more.
As a business owner, and you know, software does tend to have a higher attrition rate than something like a content membership site, you know, which is great. Obviously, we do have people that leave, but you know, not that many. And yeah, what we find the big hurdle for us is getting people, kind of like I mentioned before, getting people set up on the software and getting people understanding the software. Because once they're set up, like, especially because the nature of Edgar just handles things for you, very hands off. Once you're set up, like, honestly, I'm like, why would anyone cancel? I don't know why anyone cancels once they're going. And actually, sometimes the people that do cancel, we have a really high rate of people that come back because it's so hands off. I think sometimes people start to take it for granted. They're like, what is this thing really doing? And then they cancel. They're like, oh, it was doing all of my social media. I just didn't realize because I never logged into it. So yeah, for us, it's just all about getting, you know, the educational pieces and making it as easy as possible for people to get started. So that's definitely something that it's a very active problem that we're always working on. How can we make this easier to get up and running with Edgar as quickly as possible?
And I really like that because, again, and I was talking to Mike Morrison a few weeks ago, who's one of the founders of the membership guys, and we were talking about recurring revenue and, you know, the fact that when you run any recurring revenue model, a lot of actually your marketing is done through word of mouth. You might not necessarily hear about it, but the people who are Edgar fans are like diehard. And if you mention one of the other brands, they're like, oh no, you don't need that. This is why you need Edgar. And we were saying the same about our membership sites and things. You get diehard, like I have my membership site we call the Dotties. And when we go to events and there are other Dotties there, people always go, oh my God, you must be part of the Dotties, because they'll always sit in a big gang and like they'll tell everybody about it. And it's that kind of thing. You buy into the brand and you identify as, okay, I am that person. I am the person who buys the Apple Mac. I am the person who uses MeetEdgar. I am the person who is the Dottie or whatever that is. And that's really strong, you know. So do you feel like in your business, word of mouth has been really a big thing for you in terms of growing as quickly as you have?
Yes. I mean, and it's very frustrating as, you know, I'm someone with a marketing background. Word of mouth, on the one hand, it's absolutely what you want as far as how your business grows, because not only is word of mouth relatively free for the business, but word of mouth scales with your customer base. And that's something that's really important as a subscription business, because churn also scales with your customer base, right? If we're losing 5% of people, that's more people, right? That 5% gets bigger and bigger the larger we grow. And most marketing channels are unrelated to our customers, right? Whatever we're doing with content marketing, doesn't really matter if we have 2,000 or 5,000 customers. But word of mouth, if every customer, every other, whatever is referring us, that will continue to scale right alongside our churn, which is, as you grow with a subscription business, you start to see that sometimes your churn gets higher than your new customers because you're doing the same old marketing stuff they were. So word of mouth is just incredibly important for that reason. It's also 100% impossible to track, which just drives marketers absolutely insane. Like, you know, you can ask people where they heard of you, and that is how we know just anecdotally that we do get a lot of word of mouth, because so many of our customers say that. But, you know, even things like, we do have a referral program. It's not used by that many of our customers. Like, you can try to track this stuff, but really how it happens is just like, it's conversations, right? It's you're texting your friend, you're like, what do you do for social media? You know, you're talking to someone at an event. So yes, word of mouth is so important. And I think a lot of word of mouth, it's not even about, like I said, having a referral program or like giving people some easy way to refer you. That stuff just very often is not used. It's really about, just like you said, creating that experience where someone feels very connected to your brand, really self-identifies as, yes, I'm someone who uses MeetEdgar. I'm someone who loves MeetEdgar.
And I think it's really powerful. I mean, Jay Bear describes it as having a talk trigger, and the example that he usually uses is the DoubleTree Hilton, where apparently they give you a warm cookie. Clearly I've missed this, because it's not something that happens in the UK. They've never given me a warm cookie. But he uses that example, and you know, again, it's something that's inherently really difficult to track. But when they went out and said to people who had specifically booked rooms, how many of you then went on and told people, I got this free cookie? It was like 70% or something ridiculous, you know. But again, it's not about them having a referral scheme going, well, if you tell 10 of your friends, you'll get a room for free.
Right.
People tell people about great experiences because they just enjoy it. And it's not so much about what am I going to get, as much as, oh my God, here's something, just like when you buy a great pair of shoes or you get a really good deal on a computer or something, you go and tell everybody because you enjoy it. You know, you want other people to have the same feeling.
Yeah. And I think the part of it that you can engineer is that quirkiness, or that, you know, Seth Godin always talks about remarkability, right? Meaning literally you remark upon something. It's remarkable. And for us, some of that has been our brand. We always call Edgar he. We have this, Edgar is an octopus, and he is the octopus who runs your social media for you as opposed to the software. We have Edgar is my boyfriend stickers. and that came from our customers because people would say to us, Edgar is my boyfriend. That needs to be on a sticker. So yeah, I think that's the part that you can do as a brand. You can think about what would stand out just a little bit. You and I people are listening to us, but we're on video right now. I'm seeing dots behind you. You told me about the dotties, right? Like I'm putting that together. Oh, okay. This is her brand, and it has a visual component, right? It's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be that complicated, but just thinking about these little touches where you can make it easier to give people something to easily identify and latch onto and talk about.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing that's powerful. I mean, I know a lot of people listening will be going, yeah, but what's the thing that stands out about my brand, and how can I find that? And I think sometimes we look so hard for something, and actually generally it's customer driven. Like my wallpaper, somebody found for me and said, hey Jess, you're always like talking about the dotties, and you like gold as a part of your brand. I found this wallpaper, and I was like, wow, great, and bought it. You have your customers who said Edgar is your boyfriend, and now that's become part of the brand. How can people, how can they find these things without looking? Is it a case of just listen to the feedback, or is there something else in it?
Yeah, I'm a believer that you discover your brand and you discover your brand voice instead of creating your brand voice. So I think it is that. It's like, yeah, when people talk about you or your brand, what words do they use? What do they say? I mean, obviously when you're starting from scratch, you have some creative control over this as well. And a lot of it usually is the personality of the founder too. And that's great. And that's okay. There are things about your personality, and this applies like even for me, software. I'm of course not delivering any kind of service personally as part of my business, but I started the business and my personality has infused in everything we do. So an example of it for us, even though most of our customers are women, it's not true to my personality to do like the sassy girlfriend talk. It's just like, this is not my thing. Which, a lot of brands geared towards women do, and they do it authentically. So it's always an interesting thing for us that like, we get very excited about, like, how can you be a brand for women without doing a lot of the sort of stereotypical female stuff? How do we be a brand that really respects and deeply admires, the work that, for example, like moms who run part-time businesses on the side, we absolutely love those people, big supporters, but we don't have like mompreneur as part of our brand, which I'm really not dissing that. It's just, it's not true to us. So yeah, I think looking at your own, how you view the world and how you talk about things can definitely help uncover what that brand is.
I love that. And I do. I think it's so important. You ultimately have to be the person behind it. Like you have to be the driving force, because and again, I think you've strayed to that like authenticity. I hate that word now. Ever since I've been online, like everyone says it and nobody really knows what it means apparently, because they're like so against what it actually means. But you have to, I think, know yourself and appreciate that is going to affect your business. So if you're not somebody who naturally drops an F-bomb every 5 minutes,
right,
doing it in your copy is not going to help, because people are then really surprised when they turn up and you're actually very sweet and really well mannered and all this kind of thing. They're like, okay, well, how did that happen? It's one of those things. I think people assume when they build a business that they should build it almost from a corporate perspective. So like when people come online, they're very vanilla. They don't necessarily share tons of opinions and things like that, because they want to keep an even keel. And then over time, I think everyone kind of amalgamates and they try so hard to lead, and I'm obviously doing air quotes here, potties, but they try so hard to lead that in the end they end up following, because they're not really sure on what's going to work yet. And it's not about figuring out what works right from the get-go. It's about doing things and seeing how they merge in.
Yeah, and I think it's something we almost all go through when we start, because when you start a business, you're like, what do? I don't know anything. So you look around and you do what other people do, right? Which is like, it totally makes sense. There are just a million things to figure out when you're starting. It makes sense to do some copying of what other people are doing. But by definition, yeah, you can never be the leader if you look how could you possibly be the leader if you look like everyone else? You're just one of many. And having essentially the same brand, but making it purple instead of pink, like, is not going to cut it. You know, it's not just, oh, I'm going to use a different font or something. It really needs to be deeper than that. And it feels very scary to most people, right? Because it is leaving the tribe, it is doing something different, going out on a limb, and it feels very scary to do for your own company, but we all are just desperate for it as consumers. You know, what everyone loves as consumers is just that anything that stands out at all, right? Again, being remarkable. When we see any kind of, when you're at the grocery store and you're like looking at the laundry detergent, you're like, I just wish one of these would have like a joke on it or a weird picture or something. Like, they just all look exactly the same. And all the brands are too scared to do that. So when one finally does, it stands out so much. So don't be afraid for that to be you.
I completely agree. And seriously, thank you so much. This has been phenomenal. And I know that everyone's going to be like, oh my God, I have to go and talk to Laura Roeder about everything to do with social media. So where can people find you? If they, like me, want to be fully paid up members of the MeetEdgar Society Club, Octopus family friend thing, yes, where can they find you guys?
Yeah, so you can find us at meetedgar.com. That's MEET, not MEAT.
Which goes down well with the vegans, right?
No. Although Edgar is an octopus, and a lot of people eat octopus, but that's not what we're doing here. So yeah, meetedgar.com or MeetEdgar anywhere on social. And if you're listening to this podcast, you can use the coupon code podcast in all caps, and that will give you your first month free off Edgar. So you can come and check them out, see if you like them.
Do it, you will be obsessed. So there you go, guys. If you want to go and check out MeetEdgar, please do. It's seriously genuinely amazing. And if you are lazy like me, we'll transform your social media scheduling forever. So just go ahead over to meetedgar.com, use that code podcast all in caps, and you'll be able to get your first month free. Thank you so much for coming on. Seriously, this has been epic.
Thank you.